that is legitimately an outdated point of view.
Yes.
You are likely doing more harm than good if you lead a child or coach a child to perform or train or prepare in an outdated way. Like, this is a new day.
Welcome to the Rich and Regular podcast, where we explore life at the intersection of money. I'm Kirsten.
And I'm Julian. And today we're talking about NIL, name, image, and likeness, and this new earning opportunity in youth sports. This is a topic that I've been wanting to talk about for a long time. I think we have punted, no pun intended, this conversation, waiting for us to find the perfect expert. And then after a while, I was like, you know what, let's just
There are no experts.
become overnight experts real quick, because there were a lot of parallels between this topic and our own life and the work that we do. But before we do that, I want to give a shout out. This is to Jackie B. I'm calling her Jackie, but I'm pretty sure she doesn't go by Jackie. Maybe she goes by Jackie. Anyway, Jacqueline B. I won't say her full name. She said she posted a review. It hasn't populated yet, but she did send us.
It's on Spotify.
Oh, it's on Spotify. Okay, well, I don't have Spotify in front of me, but I do have the email that she sent, which really warmed my heart. The subject was social influence, and a shout out to a 6-star episode with Dr. Marcus Collins, which I believe was episode 180. The first paragraph of her email, and I'll stop there, says, I was reflecting on the interview with Dr. Marcus Collins and contemplating what I view as, quote, our people / our audience, end quote, and what I deem as positive influence. Both of you represent this positive influence by continuing to present the best, honest, and clear content in the intersection of finance, family, and food and media. Thank you. She went on to share a little bit about her mom and some of the things that she's diving into, which tickled the history nerd inside of me. And so I've been diving deep into Franklin Delano Roosevelt and Eleanor and fireside chats and all that stuff. But anyway, thank you, Jackie. I really appreciate that. And everyone that sends us notes and leaves us reviews, we really, really appreciate it.
You always blackify FDR's middle name, Delano. It's Delano.
Delano. I don't remember the other episode I did that on. It's because I know a Delano. I know a Delano. His name is Delano.
It can't be more than 2 or 3 of them.
Nah, man.
It's like
Franklin. Frankie D.
Anyway.
All right. So the subject, and you're going to have to keep me honest here, because I legitimately get super excited about this opportunity, especially as it relates to our son. And so, quick little backstory to help our listeners and viewers understand why this topic is being presented and published now. Our son started Little League, when he was 5, I think. And
he was about to turn 6.
And he was showing signs of oh wow, he kind of gets to the game, really started taking to it really quickly. And it still took us about a year or so to really start saying, well, wait a second, this is really interesting. And I would say last year, but certainly this year, is when we really took things to the next level, took it a lot more seriously, got on private coaching and all that stuff. And as we just started projecting about the future and then realizing that his student athlete experience is going to be so wildly different from any kind of student athlete
any generation before him
that has ever happened before. Yeah. And so all of these things really just started getting us really interested. And there were 3 big reasons that really, on top of his very obvious talent, that really got us interested. One was just that we realized that we had the resources to develop him above and beyond just playing outside with his friends. And so he's been getting private coaching and goes to a private facility, and we go to the park and we practice pretty much on a regular basis. The second one was that we also just happen to live in a baseball market, right? So Atlanta, we got the Falcons and the Hawks, but anyone that follows sports here knows the real championship sports team is the Braves. They're the ones that actually bring chips to the city. I'm not shading the other two. It's a fact, right? The Hawks and the Falcons are struggling, and they have been. Whereas the Braves, they've had some down seasons back in the day, but they've done really well. So this is a baseball city. But the third reason is the topic at hand, which is this new NIL ruling is relatively new, but like we're just now starting to see how it's kind of working and coming together. And it's really, really interesting. Athletes basically of any age at this point now have an opportunity to earn money, but this is specifically relevant for collegiate athletes, but it also extends into like youth sports and high school athletes, like pretty much anyone, which is wild. Like legitimately earn like really, really, really good money for their profiles. And so all of that to say, as we are thinking about our son and the opportunities that he has, it's like, wait a second, like, wow, like we might be able to pull something off here. So let's keep this thing going and see where we can go with this. So it's really, really exciting. And, those things, I'm sure there are other reasons, but that's part of the reason why we really wanted to tackle this.
Yeah, it's a huge historic ruling because in the past, student athletes, which is a term that the NCAA coined back in the 1950s, were not allowed to earn any money. And they created this term student athlete because they wanted to distinguish them from employees and from students. Even students have basic rights on campus where if they get injured or if something were to happen, they're entitled to something because they're students.
Right.
Student athletes have this whole other set of rules and regulations and things that they can and cannot do because of that title. Now, as student athletes, the schools can earn money on streaming their sports,
which they
the
do.
Sales of their merchandise through ticket sales, through special events like dinners, fundraisers. The coaches can make buku money on these games that they're on the sidelines for, but the student athletes could not. They were left out.
Nothing. And their eligibility would be completely stripped away if 50 cents was found in their pockets. Yeah.
Of people whose not even just their eligibility, but their reputation was tarnished because of accusations of taking money. And so to put this all in perspective, we talked a little bit about this with the Olympics. In 2023, the NCAA generated $1.28 billion with a B in revenue, mostly through media rights and advertising deals tied to like the championship events, Final Four, bowl games, March Madness, all that stuff.
This is a nonprofit, by the way.
Right.
I just want to put that out there.
Right.
This is not a for-profit business. This is a $1 billion nonprofit organization that does not pay the players.
Yes. And then on top of that, in 2023, the top 10 Division I college football programs earned $2.2 billion in revenue. The top 10 Division I basketball programs earned $341 million, so about a sixth of college football programs.
I was surprised by that. I thought it would, not necessarily on par, but like it makes sense. Like college football is that much more of a beast of a market. Yeah. But like to just look or to use like the top 10 as a bit of a proxy, like it's 6 times bigger than its top 10, in terms of basketball. That was wow.
And the average salary for a D1 football coach is, want to guess? Don't look at my notes.
It's too late.
All right, y'all. The average salary for a D1 football coach is $3.6 million per year. That's base. And then the average salary for a D1 college basketball coach is $2.8 million. So these people are earning upwards of $3 million a year every year, on top of bonuses, perks, expenses being covered, all that jazz, and the players are getting nothing. Well, the July 1st, 2023 ruling changed that indefinitely. And it said that the NCAA's rules that limit athletes' compensation violate antitrust laws. So it's basically like saying companies can't collude to keep wages low.
Right.
And the court saying that the NCAA's amateurism model was a conspiracy to suppress competition. And so it became this labor rights issue. It was no longer just like an opinion of the students who work hard and who see their jerseys being sold without ever getting a dime. It was like, no, this is a labor rights issue. If we don't allow Google to do it or Microsoft or Kellogg, then we can't allow these colleges to do the same thing.
Yeah. So the gist of the ruling basically, to your point, allows athletes to now receive compensation for their name, image, and likeness, hence the acronym NIL. And so if you've been hearing that term, that's what it stands for: name, image, and likeness. And that basically means, endorsements, sponsorships, opportunities, anything that is connected to their name or their popularity, they can now basically be compensated for that. It also means that colleges cannot slap their hands or restrict their eligibility for them doing that, right? Because we know, as you might imagine, that could be contentious. And so previously, prior to this ruling, that was almost like the thing sort of hanging in the background, basically
Yeah.
stopping people from even thinking about it, even though they kind of backdoored it in a lot of ways. But
And even
if they
if
got discovered, like they would, be defamed and ineligible to play. And to your point, they would be essentially labeled and become notorious, unable to like do the thing that they worked so hard to do, just because they needed the money to kind of get by. It's crazy.
even if the deal is in conflict with someone that the university partners with,
Correct.
the university cannot stand in the way of that athlete taking that deal, right? If the university has a partnership with Adidas,
Right.
and New Balance cuts a bigger check or wants you to wear their undergarment, whatever it's called, their sweat-proof T-shirt,
Yeah.
then you're allowed to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and that has happened in pro sports, right?
You may not be able to do it in the game, but
Right.
as a person, you can do that and take money like for an Instagram post or something.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I would say the other big takeaway from this ruling was that athletes can also decide to negotiate with agents and advisors as they are negotiating or contemplating some of these new deals without fear of their eligibility being stripped away, right? And so again, that was like a big reason why so many of these people would shy away from it, and as a result did, and as a result struggled, which I would imagine also impacted the quality of the play. And so why are we talking about this? This is obviously not a sports podcast, but this is something that I would imagine anyone who has a friend who has a child like we do, maybe other children, or, may just be a mentor or a guardian to a child who is doing these things. You need to know these things. And we're hoping you can advise these students based on some of the things that we're talking about here, because we're not talking about little money. And we'll talk about that in detail in a couple of minutes to give you an idea. But I think if you're a parent, for sure, that is something that you need to know, and I would say take really, really seriously. Like, there is money to be made. And I'll just stop there for a second, because it's such a new way of thinking, right? If you're 20, 30 years old, we're now telling you that it is perfectly like to your advantage to take advantage of your name, your image, your likeness, your photography, the video content that you create, anything that other people deem of value. If there's a company out there that wants to pay you for it, it is a literal marketplace, and you are now eligible to be compensated for that work, is so long as you do a couple of things, right? So parents, it's real. It's not just talk. You're hearing it from us. Do your own research, of course, but it is a very real thing. The NCAA cannot step in the way of this. There are some state-by-state things that you should be looking at. And so as you're doing your own research, make sure you are also adding that supplementary research to make sure that your state doesn't have some limit or some type of other thing that might make your process of exploring this idea a little bit more complicated. And last but not least, we mentioned agents and the ability for agents to step in there. I know every time you hear the word agent, I would imagine some people feel like that sounds really complicated, really serious, and maybe you even think like a little sketchy. Getting an agent is not required. It's something that you can do. I would think of it the same way you might think of as a financial advisor, right? Like, you don't have to have a financial advisor to invest. You do not have to have an agent in order to take advantage of these kinds of opportunities. And so I want to give you guys just a real world example, just kind of talking about our son, and we'll, be brief here. But as I said, we've been investing in his development as a baseball player for the last year. Like, I would say pretty seriously over the last, maybe even less than a year. And we've seen results, and we're really, really excited about that. We started to flirt with, what if we started like applying some of the same, lessons and things that we've learned in running Rich and Regular with our son, right? Like, seeing on social media, see if we can get the attention of some of these major brands that provide some of the equipment that he trains with. We were just kind of curious to see what would happen. And sure as shit, sure as shit. And I'm telling you, like, my son does not have his own social media account or anything like that. This is just me publishing things through our own personal social media. But basically, I would post some content with him training with a tool, and I would tag that brand. And they seem to like really be liking it and engaging with it. And I'm talking like two major brands. I'm not going to name the brand, but like two major brands saw the videos and were like, oh, we really, really like that. Right. And so they either want to retweet it, they want to claim that content as their own, or they're saying, hey, can we do this? And, you know, if you're okay with it, reply here, or you can negotiate and so on. But it's real, right? Like that was like as big as our little experiment went. And for one of those deals, we actually were able to negotiate some merchandise in exchange for the video that we actually created so that they can use that. And we actually see that video being used on a pretty regular basis in advertisements for our son, which I think is really, really cool. For us, that was a big win because it was like, yeah, get his name out there, get his name and image and all that stuff out there. So all of that to say, we could have negotiated that for income. We decided not to do that and said, you know what, let's just see what this would look like. And it was a very, very simple thing. So I would say that's what you would want to be mindful of if you think this is something that you want to do. One, compensation is 100% negotiable, right? So if that happens to you, or if you just never thought to tag that brand, and I'm telling you, like, don't think that just because it's a big brand, you shouldn't do it. I'm telling you that right now. It doesn't matter. Tag them, see what they do. And if they reach out, all you have to do is say, well, yeah, you can have it. And in exchange, I would expect this, this, and this. Two, you would also want to negotiate the terms. And so if they're saying, yes, they want to use this photo or this video, just figure out how long you want to agree to, because otherwise they're going to assume that they can use it indefinitely. And then lastly, and this I would say is when you start to really like get your feet wet, you want to make sure that you're not giving up like exclusive rights to use that person or that image, and that you are restricted from, let's say, posting anything with an alternative. I'll just make up an example. You already used the example of Nike, or it was Adidas or New Balance. Doesn't matter. Let's say you posted and you tagged something Adidas related, and you reached out, you negotiated with Adidas and said, yes, I want this for $500. You want to make sure you read the fine print. Because they may say, great, you can do that, but you are also agreeing not to post any content related to any competitors like Nike, you know, New Balance, etc. So those are the kind of like nitty gritty details. Now you can't strike through them, but I just wanted to make sure we threw that out there because that's how it happens. Yeah. It really is just that simple. It can be super formal sometimes. It can be super informal, but these are the opportunities that are out there. And I'm telling you, those numbers, $500, $1,000, that's not an exaggeration. That's actually pretty low in my opinion. But I would imagine for most people who've never done this before would be like, there's no way this company would pay you $500. I'm telling you, they do it all the time. Like all the time. It's not a big deal.
And that's just one example of using content, regular content, as a lead magnet to attract potential sponsors. If you have an athlete that already has an audience, that deal may look different, right? There's different types of deals. You could do a brand ambassadorship where you partner with a company to promote a product or a service. So say your star basketball player starts endorsing a sports drink or a smoothie after practice. It could be your track athlete who uses a certain shoe. Or an app, right? It could also be a social media campaign where your student gets paid to create content for Instagram or Facebook or YouTube. It's not something that they've already done and, you know, it's a tag and see what happens. They're being paid to create. So maybe your football player has this new fitness tracker that they like to use, and that company pays them to create a video, which they post on their account. You can also get paid to appear at certain events or meet fans or participate in promotions, things like signing autographs or doing a Q&A at a local elementary school or for a little league group. And then there's the personal branding aspect, which I think is the most exciting because of how many personal brands there are. Now these athletes can create their own merch, their own branded merchandise, like t-shirts, hats, custom jerseys. Like I remember there was a kid from this year's Little League World Series who did a little dance before he stole home. Like he has the ability to trademark and profit off of that gesture, so to speak. Or he could just create some merch, whatever he wants to do. That was not allowed before. Like Big Baller Brand was truly different. And that's why he didn't send his kids to traditional colleges, because he wanted to be able to continue to monetize on that brand.
Right.
And then there's other creative avenues, like, you know, if you're a rapper, if your athlete is also a musician, they can earn royalties now using their name. They can appear in music videos. They can do all of these things, even acting, right? They can get a little side part. These things were not allowed before, which is insane to me when I think about it. But I think the key here, regardless of like what type of deal you do, the key here is having an audience, right? The audience is what makes an NIL deal lucrative or not. Your athlete needs to be known by enough people to make an endorsement worth something. At the end of the day, this is an eyeballs game. They don't have to be known by millions of people. They don't have to be famous in general. They can just be famous to the family. If you're famous in South Carolina in your city, that's enough to get a deal with like a local car dealer or a local restaurant.
Yes.
And so you really have to think about the audience that your athlete has.
Yes. Yes. Okay. So I'm thinking about the person who thinks this is interesting and they're like, wow, like you mean to tell me my son, who's the best volleyball player or fencer or like even something random like that. It was like, you think that they could be able to make some money doing this? And the answer is yes. Like that is 100% true. And now is really the time, I would say, for a lot of people to really start thinking differently about that. Now, I also know that having met quite a few people of our generation, or maybe even a little bit older, they would say, yeah, but see, I don't know how to do it. Like, I see what you guys do in the videos and all that stuff. And the first thing that I would say is take that idea, crumple it up like a piece of paper and throw it out, because like this is simple math. And by that, I mean, if a company is going to pay you, let's just say $1,000 for you to post, or your son or your daughter to post a image or a little video of them using a product or something like that, they're paying you $1,000. If you can find someone who's going to do all of the recording, the editing, the styling, and all that stuff for $200, wouldn't you still be happy that you made $800 that you would not have been able to make otherwise? And that's a really odd example, but like you can totally do that, right? And so if it's not $1,000 on a higher level, maybe it is a smaller amount. Let me use a very real example. This is one of the examples that we experienced back in 2018. And I remember being really excited about it because, one, it was, like our friend Chris Browning says, a lesson in entrepreneurship, if you will. No, he didn't say that. He said something more like entrepreneurship is being paid to learn.
Yes.
That's what it was. I just remixed it a little
Chris
bit.
Over there like, why am I in it?
I ain't got nothing to do with this. Well, back in 2018, this was one of our earliest deals. I remember we got contacted by a company and they wanted us to create a video for their particular brand. I'm not going to, out of respect for the company and all that stuff, we're not going to name it. But they wanted us to create a video. And so we submitted a simple proposal and said, yes, we'd love to. Here's what we can do. Here's a general idea of what the video would look like. Here's an idea of what we would say, blah, blah, blah. And we said for us to create this video and post it on our social media channels would be $7,500. And we would require 50% be paid up front and the remaining 50% after we submit and post it online. And so had we done, I think we'd never even done this before, if I'm not mistaken. We'd never done this.
My heart was racing when we typed the numbers.
He was like, oh, wow. They said yes.
Like,
we'd never done it before. But what we did know was that it did not cost $7,500 to create the video. And so we knew someone who could create these kinds of videos really, really well, high quality, and they could do it for, I want to say maybe, I think it was like $1,200 or something like that. And then I think one of the strategies that I've always employed is to say, I'll pay you even more if you can do it quicker, right? So if your normal turnaround is 72 hours, I would like to have it in 24 hours and I'll pay you even more. And most people would jump at that and say, absolutely. You know what? Let me cancel the other thing that I had going on because this is the kind of business that I want. And so all of that to say, we were able to keep the rest as profit, right? We got paid for the work. We paid someone to actually create it. We posted it. And we essentially got paid 50% up front, paid the person to edit and produce the video content. And then once we posted it online, submitted the invoice and got paid for the second half. Then it got sweeter. And this is the part that really got interesting to me because the video was so successful for them. They came back and said, hey, this is really, really great. But in our original contract, we said that we could use this video for 6 months. We think it'll actually really work for like a separate, I think it was like Valentine's Day or something like that. We
Yeah.
had created it for a different purpose. And it was like, we actually want to use this story, this video for Valentine's Day, which would require us to renegotiate a deal. And in this case, they're basically just signing an extension for the ability to license and use this content with
For
our
longer.
name, image, and likeness in it for a longer period of time than we'd originally agreed to. How much would that be? And we'd never done this before. So we could have said $500. We could have said
Could
$1,000.
have said, y'all can just have it. It's
We could have
fine.
said, you know what? We're honored that you just want to do it. But like, I think that this is a good amount that we would like to charge for you to have the ability to do it longer. And we charged $4,500 and they said yes. And so we got paid an additional $4,500 to do that content. And nothing changed. We didn't have to do anything.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so I'm not sharing this as a story to brag. I'm sharing that to say that this is a real life example. These are the things that you can negotiate. They could have said no. And there've certainly been cases where we have charged larger amounts of money and people have said no. But all of that to say, if we weren't talking about personal finance, if we were talking about our son, and he just hit this amazing home run or did this amazing thing, whatever it is. And they wanted it originally for the summer, but then they realized, oh, this would also really be great for Black History Month. I'm just making it up. Like, this is exactly the kind of back and forth negotiation that I want more of us to be mindful of, because it's real.
Yeah.
And oh, by the way, like, to add the cherry on the top, especially when we're talking about kids, you know, the federal government has basically a allotment. I want to say it's like just shy of like $13,000, where like youth are able to earn income and not be charged federal income taxes on it. And so in theory, a child could earn this kind of money, spend it and or invest it, and not have to pay any taxes on this money, which I think is a really, really exciting thing. Even if we wanted to do that through our business and then pay our son that way, there's multiple ways that we can do it. So all of that to say, this is why we're talking about this.
Yeah.
Because like, this is 100% possible for a lot more people, for everyone really, and it's never really been the case.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are going to get caught up in the how, because this is so new and nobody wants to mess it up. Everybody wants to do it right. And what we're trying to say is there is no right.
We're so early.
It's still very new, very wild, wild west. And this is a whole new market. Like,
Yes.
It's a massive amount of people that are now eligible to earn income. The NCAA reports that they have about 500,000 student athletes across all three divisions, D1, D2, D3. And that doesn't include like JUCOs, smaller clubs where, you know, you might go to a local community college or an online college, but you play in a different club. You're still a college athlete. You're still able to earn on your name, image, and likeness. So if I had to guess, let's just say 675,000 athletes total at the collegiate level. Now, to put that in perspective, there are about 2 million elementary school teachers in the United States. So I would imagine there are just as many college athletes as there are first and second grade teachers. Now, imagine if a law passed tomorrow that said teachers now can earn extra money by promoting certain products in their classroom or to their online audience of other educators and parents.
Some teachers do this, by the way.
Some teachers already do this.
And shout out to the teachers who are pretty savvy and have a list of affiliate
No law needed to be
links and all of
passed.
those things, who take advantage of what they see and hear on the internet in terms of digital marketing and use that to curate lists and recommendations. You guys are ahead of the curve. Keep on spreading the word.
Absolutely. But my point here is that the list of companies that they promote, recommendations, products that they use, it's going to be very different based on the teacher. If you're a teacher in Newark, New Jersey, you probably got a very different list of recommendations, classroom tactics than a teacher in Dallas, Texas, right? This is still very, very new. There are a lot of loopholes. There is a lot of unknowns. And with situations like this, you really have to come in with a learning curve mentality. Be willing to start small with very local partnerships or collaborations. Just test the waters and get experience. It could be your friend that has a business, a small business. It could be your own Etsy shop. It don't matter. Just start small, learn, embrace the failures. It's inevitable that some of these deals are not going to work out. So you need to see these failures as opportunities to adjust your approach and just keep pushing forward.
Maybe.
Exactly.
Yeah.
and then document the journey. Keep track of the experiences, the successes, the challenges, because it will be valuable data for future negotiations. And it might also inspire others. Like, you could be one of them people that lead the way and show others how to do this as a student or as a parent.
Yeah, and I'll just add on to that to say, just in terms of the lessons, like, because it's such a new industry, it's I know what people are looking for: certainty, right? They would say, how much should I charge?
Right.
We've said it 1,000 times before. This is another one of those examples where you just have to be willing to be wildly, let me not say wildly, but you have to think irrationally, because what happens is people say, well, to your point, I'm a teacher, I make $40,000. There's no way anyone's going to realistically pay you $10,000 to do that. And I hate to break it to you, but like, that is the world that we live in. And
if they can make $1 million off of you,
this is the thing that I think gets in the way. We don't intend to do that, but the well-meaning mentor or parent who is unfamiliar with this space will look at themselves as a bit of a proxy and say, well, there's no way, because I'm a lawyer and I get paid this amount of money, there's no way anyone's going to pay you just to post something on social media. And you are 1,000% wrong, my friend. You are 1,000% wrong. I hear it all the time. And so I am low-key like telling you guys to put your ego aside and just listen with an open heart and open ears. This is a new day, new industry, wildly new opportunities. Now, let me go to the next excuse that I think somebody will say, aside from, oh, well, we don't know how to make those kinds of videos. Fine, just find someone who does and pay them a certain amount and pocket the rest. My son or daughter is not that good. They're not that good. Well, yeah, it's easy for you to say if they're a Heisman Trophy winner. That does not matter.
No, it doesn't.
That does not matter. To your point, does that person have an audience?
And for whatever reason, it
Correct.
may not be because they play well. It could be because they're missing a fourth finger.
They could be the only girl in the program.
People like their braces.
They could be the only person of color that is playing the sport.
Period.
You're the only black, I'm making it out, water polo player on the team. That's all they need to see.
That's all they need.
To say, you know what, because we need someone, because it's looking pretty white over here.
We need a swim cap ambassador.
We need someone, exactly, who has a different sort of hair texture. Oh, you know what? No one has freckles. My daughter is the only one that has freckles.
Hello, sunscreen campaign.
Here we go.
It does not. You got to think outside of the box here.
Yeah. And again, this is the world that we live in. This is the attention economy. This is NIL basically opening up and clearing the way. Now, I will also say this. We were dropping some numbers, some big Bs with respect to what the NCAA and what colleges and universities are making. The pie is significantly bigger for the companies and the sponsors that are actually paying the NCAA, right? Somebody is cutting the NCAA a check.
Oh, yeah.
So you've got to think way bigger.
Are we going to get to future?
Than just that.
Yeah. Because I got predictions for the future.
It means absolutely nothing. A billion is pretty small. Compared to the brands and sponsors that would actually want to spend with NCAA, right? Because not everyone makes the cut. That's who we're talking to. So there's no middleman anymore. And so long as you have done your part and you understand how to negotiate these deals, there is likely an earning opportunity for you if you're willing to actually play the game, which is a perfect segue to this new documentary, which was just released on Prime Video called The Money Game. You're going to talk about that a little bit.
The Money Game is a new Amazon Prime documentary about NIL and specifically the athletes at LSU who were some of the biggest benefactors and faces of NIL deals, both good, bad, controversial, ugly. Like, it goes through all of the turmoil from an athlete's point of view and even from the school's point of view with this new ruling. And in it, they talk about how the ruling passed on July 1st, 2023. And by July 2nd, they all had deals.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it was quick.
Immediate.
And so throughout the documentary, they go through all of these different athletes. They're profiling them. And they show estimated earnings for a few of them. So Livy Dunn, who is a gymnast at LSU, her estimated earnings were about $9.3 million. Now, she has a TikTok where she reviews beauty products and lifestyle products. Like, it's not just about like floor mats and high beams.
But to her point, right? Like, she's doing flips on the beach. You know what I mean? Like, the content that she posts is not her doing all of her gymnast routines like in competition.
Right.
You know, it's her just being her and Like, and respectfully, you've probably seen this girl and didn't realize it was her
Yes.
on a commercial.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah. Flau'jae Johnson, she earned estimated about $3 million. Now, she is also a musician who does like shows and concerts and raps and has done jingles for different commercials. Trace Young is a football player, estimated earnings $204,000.
Nah, he's a basketball player.
Basketball player.
He's a basketball player.
Yeah.
And no disrespect to Trace Young, right? Like, I don't believe he's the star of the team. Right. Like, you know, like he's a good athlete. Obviously, he's a D1 athlete, but he's not the biggest star on the team. And he's not the biggest face or star of LSU. I mean, Angel Reese, more than anyone, I would imagine, is likely going to be that person.
And she was in the video and talked about all of the controversy that she got because of the number of deals. Now, they did not give an estimated earnings number for her, which I thought was an interesting editorial choice.
I'm willing to bet Angel did not share those details.
I'm sure she didn't.
I'm willing
she has agents and she's now in a professional league, and Correct. It wouldn't make sense to share those details. Same with Jaden Daniels, who was their quarterback. He did not share details, but they did show him and his mom turning down deals because they wanted to wait until after the bowl games and after the draft because they knew he'd be worth more. And then he got a concussion and had to sit out. But the point is, they knew that it didn't make sense to sell his name as a college junior or senior when in a year he'll be worth $35 million.
Correct.
And they didn't want there to be any conflict or any reason for Nike or Adidas or whoever to go to the next person on the list because a year before you were shilling a different brand, right? So again, all of these players, and there weren't just names that you know, there were also track athletes who are relatively unknown, but very, very talented, who were in this documentary. Some were struggling to make content, but still, you know, being offered deals. A lot of them were being lowballed. Like, I was surprised that some of the numbers that were being thrown out, but it didn't matter if you were top tier on the team. It didn't matter if you were injured, if you were playing that night. If you were good at making content, you were making bank.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, LSU provided their students with resources within their athletic department, which I thought was a real advantage.
Yes.
And these students were taking advantage of it. And again, like as a college student, $700, $1,000, that's good money.
Yeah, I don't think you mentioned Trace Young, right? But what he earned, I think it was okay. It was like $200,000. CEO, you know what I mean? Like corporate executive money is what he was able to learn while being a pretty good basketball player while he's still in college. Not for the work that he's doing on the court, but because he has amassed a significant following and he has gotten really, really good at capturing and telling those stories and doing those things on social media. So yeah, I think it's a great introduction for anyone who wants to learn a little bit more about these things and kind of get a feel for it, because they show the full spectrum for what these kinds of opportunities can look like. And I think it can help you navigate negotiations and any of those deals that might actually come your way. I also will say I was really, really intrigued as it was playing out, because they mentioned a story that I remember from my childhood. I remember this had to be like the 90s. This was back when the UCLA Bruins were like a really dominant team in college basketball. And the O'Bannon brothers, it was Charles and Ed O'Bannon. I remember they were like twins, or like maybe one was like a little older than the other. And they both played for UCLA. Long story short, like these guys, their case against the NCAA, and I don't know, this started like in the 90s. Like this was like the beginning of the undoing of this student athlete BS that's been going on for a couple of decades now, or really for as long as I can even remember. I don't know when it started, but I remember playing like a video game and how accustomed to the fact that I would be that, oh, I'm playing UCLA and I know that that's just based on like the image that that's supposed to be Ed O'Bannon because he was bald and he was left-handed, and the number might have been the same, but like the name would have been like O'Keefe, you know, not O'Bannon, like O'Shannon. And it was like, that was the NCAA's way of making money through video games while also protecting themselves legally from officially using these kids' names, even though they were using their likeness in these video games. And I remember they were talking about it and it being like a really, really big deal. But again, when you don't know any better, you think it just is what it is. This is how it's always been. And if you're good enough, then eventually you'll be able to start earning money. But meanwhile, it leaves like 99% of the people behind. And that day is essentially over. So shout out to the O'Bannon family for being willing to put themselves out there and really opening up the door for a lot of people to come afterward.
Well, did you see that Reggie Bush just sued USC for compensation regarding his name, image, and likeness?
Good.
Yeah. According to his lawsuit, he's basically saying that they made money off of him in perpetuity, both during his time as a student athlete, his time as an NFL player, and even after that.
Can you imagine how much money the University of Michigan made off the Fab Five?
Well, I was just about to say, he's not the first and he won't be the last. They took his Heisman Trophy. Like, there's Chris Webber, the Fab Five, there's Cam Newton, there's Johnny Manziel. Like, there are all these players who have been accused of profiting from their name, image, and likeness, took major blows to their reputation, only to have NIL passed. And they have every right to try to seek compensation or at least justice for that, right? It's no different than people who are in jail or locked up for selling weed, only to have cannabis legalized.
I was just about to say.
There's absolutely no compensation or reconciliation for the damage that's caused. This is about seeking justice. It moves beyond just a labor rights issue to a civil rights issue at this point.
Yes. This is an incredible earning opportunity, and I'm urging every single parent and or coach to educate themselves, to train up, to get better, but more importantly, to change your mindset, to stop looking at this as something that is frowned upon. Like, that is legitimately an outdated point of view. And I will step out there and say you are likely doing more harm than good if you lead a child or coach a child to perform or train or prepare in an outdated way. Like, this is a new day. And I'm telling you, you're going to eventually be faced with, once that child wakes up and learns that they could have been earning money the entire way, like, they are not going to be happy with you if you said, well, you know what, we don't want to be like those guys. We want to be a purist and tried and true. You know, at a minimum, his training or her training and development could be paid for. It could be cost neutral, paid for through some of these things, right? Instead of the family going through so much hardship to try to help this dream or this talented child actually develop. And so this is a great, great opportunity. On the high end, obviously there's money to be made. And yes, these students might be out earning their parents, which is also a part of the dynamic. And they talk about that with respect, I think it was Flau'jae in the documentary series, where, you know, the struggle that she now has as not just a student, but also as an athlete, but also as the head earner for her family, and realizing that, hey, I don't know, I could be hurt tomorrow. And all of a sudden my career completely goes away. And so she's managing all of those things, plus her outside of the field persona and her music career, etc. So all of that to say, just a couple final messages for parents. Like, do not underestimate the power of personal branding. I know when it comes to youth sports, there is a tendency to frown upon those things and to tell kids to keep their heads down or to just rely on the word of the coach. If your coach is shying away from these things, I'm actually going to tell you right now, that's a red flag. Not saying that person is a bad person, but they are likely ignoring these things, or they just have not really done their part to stay abreast of it. And so hopefully this podcast and any other research you do can be supplemental to how you educate or train this child to understand the game that is actually being played above and beyond their literal time where they are training and doing the sport. Two, don't disregard like your child's ability to earn income, like, because they're a child, right? Like, it doesn't matter. Like, you could be 6 years old, 7 years old. We know kids who are doing this right now, playing with their toys and earn significant income, and it become like the thing that you all do, and it changes the trajectory of your life. Three, I know we mentioned in a lot of cases that, hey, we created some content and then a brand liked it, but like, don't be afraid to pitch them. If you're looking at their content and saying, you know what, they don't have a kid that looks like this, or if they don't have a kid that's from Atlanta,
or
they don't have a kid that speaks Spanish, or they don't have a brother and a sister team, pitch them. It costs you absolutely nothing to say, hey, would you be interested in us creating a video that does this, this, and this for your brand? We think it would be a great idea for Hispanic Heritage Month, or National Sibling Day. I don't know. Make it up. But you got all this content and video, like on your phone anyway. All I'm asking you to do is to either edit it in a creative way and make some money on it. The other thing I would say is invest in like good equipment. Like that's gonna be, I would say, not necessarily the deal breaker, but yes, you can record it on your phone, but don't be afraid to invest in good, high quality video camera, maybe some lighting or something like that. I'm starting to see a little bit more of that. Like even as I'm training and developing our son, I'm seeing more people out there taking the time, and I can sell. It was like, all right, there you go. This person gets it. They've got a really, really good camera, not just for their own ability to look back to see whether or not they're getting better, but because it's really good content and it's something that they might actually be able to sell. And the last thing I will say, this one I would say is a bit of not necessarily a stretch, but it's also one of those things that I have noticed is around media training. The ability for a child to know what to say, to understand how to be interviewed, but more importantly, to capitalize on a moment, like when it happens, whether someone puts a camera or video in front of your face. Just take the time to think about what you might say when they ask you certain questions. Don't assume that you're going to be comfortable. Don't assume that you're going to nail it the first time. Like media training, I think is a really, really big part of this, because as these deals get more complex, as the price tag, starts to go up, the expectations for quality content and your ability to really, really nail it goes up as well. And so it's not just you throwing something up and throwing it out there. Sometimes that can be good enough, but I think if you really, really want to make good bucks, you got to be willing to invest in your craft and treat it like a job, no different than anything else.
Yeah. I guess my message is for the athletes. And the first is to test different pricing and deal structures as early as possible.
Yeah.
Like, please leave your understanding as an athlete and put on your business hat. At the end of the day, sports is an industry. Your games, your teams, your schools, your universities, those are all products. And they all have different revenue streams and different levers that can be pulled. Everything from ticket sales to merch to appearances, all of those things matter. So make sure that you're testing, deal structures and pricing along those lines.
Yep.
The second thing I'd say is that this ruling means that your name, image, likeness are considered to be assets. And so, like most assets, the value is subjective. So don't just do things. Don't use your name to promote things that don't align just because you need the money.
Yeah.
You need to be consistent in building your brand and making sure that you treat it like it is a home or a car or something else that you want to see, appreciate, and value. The next thing would be to not let your real work suffer as a result of this, because if it goes away, if you don't perform, it doesn't mean that you can't still make money. You can still get advertisements, but it does mean that you might lose your audience.
Yeah.
And again, that audience is key. And so if they can't see you play, if they can't see you at the team, like, you want to make sure that you are still performing so that that's still there, right? Yeah. And then the last part, invest your earnings. This is absolutely a cashing out situation, because this will likely be the only money you ever earn as an athlete. I'm not saying that to be a hater. I'm saying that because less than 2% of NCAA athletes go on to play professionally after college. So figure out how to live on half. Figure out a pricing situation that allows you to invest half of the money that you make while you're doing this, so that you have a head start into your life after this sport.
Yeah, this is not an opportunity to ball out, right? Like, when that time comes, right? But like, this is not what we are suggesting, because to your point, it's a new industry. It can come in a flurry and go away in a flurry. And so I would say, a bit of a book mention is to have a purpose for that income as well, right? Like, imagine it's coming, and just like we did, like, throw the number out there. What are we going to do with it if they say yes, right? It was like, all right, well, we're going to do this, this, and this. Have that plan in advance. Don't just throw that number out there and see what happens. Have a plan for that income, have a purpose for that income, and think about it from a standpoint of how having the money relieves the burden of having to worry about bills paid or all those kinds of things. Like, think about how much better of an athlete or just a a student or whatever it is you may be when you don't have this financial pressure. I think that's what we should be starting at, like looking at it from that standpoint. Not, oh, well, I get to ball out and take a great vacation. I mean, sure, if you've got it like that and you can afford to do those things, great. But I think this is really about putting yourself in a position to be even better. Because if there's a brand out there that's willing to pay you $1,000, imagine if you were even better. If you had an even larger audience, you might be able to charge 5 or 10 times that. And you don't really want to lose sight of getting better because you're just distracted by the opportunity to earn a little bit of money. So we haven't done final thoughts in a while. I would say that is my final thought. The only other thing I would say is, and you kind of alluded to this earlier, but I mean, it's hard for me to even wrap my head around where I think this is going. I mean, I do not see this trend ending at all. Like I see, gosh, I would imagine like in the next year or two, we will just start to hear about the amount of money that's been poured into it. And then from there, I would anticipate tenfold over like the next 5 years.
Absolutely.
Like somewhere in those ballpark is what I would imagine seeing. And so if you just so happen to be an athlete or one that is preparing to go to college, if you're already in college, this is your time. And I would say if there's something that you really want to dig into, in addition to your sports and or academics, I think this is it.
Yeah, especially if you're a woman. I think women have a huge opportunity here. I think we're going to see amateurism be redefined, and we'll start to see more semi-pro / hybrid models of sports.
Yeah.
I think fan engagement is going to evolve. It already has in a lot of women's sports. We saw this with the Olympics. And I think there'll be like NIL scholarships. I think there will be programs where a university sponsor says, hey, offer this scholarship and throw in a 1-year deal with us to get the player there, right? Because it's easier. It's easier than having to suss out and find recruits or split the money, right? So yeah, I think we're at the very beginning stages of this, but it's not going nowhere.
No.
Like we live in capitalism. They're always looking for new channels, and sports is just the latest one. So
all right,
put your seatbelts on. All right, y'all. Well, thank you for listening to another episode of the Rich and Regular podcast. If you like what you heard, then take your name, image, and likeness over to your favorite podcast platform and leave us a 5-star review or drop a comment below to keep the conversation going. I would love to hear what you think. If you've got a student athlete in your life, would love to hear your thoughts, and we will see y'all next week. If you like videos like this and want to see more, make sure you click subscribe and turn on notifications.